Hello indie game fans, there are several things that have become clear to me about fighting game development as I've covered these over the years, with them taking forever to make, since every additional character or move exponentially increases the difficulty of balancing, not to mention difficulties implementing rollback netcode and the big four basically absorbing all the players. So indie developers attempting to do this are some of the most hardcore and dedicated people since they love the genre, so upcoming games begins with Shattered, a 2D pixel art title that seems to be relatively early in development, so much so that the pixel art style of two of the characters flicker in between different resolutions, which I don't think is intentional. But it is set in a sci-fi fantasy world inspired by European comics, which is interesting. There is a shatter mechanic which causes your opponent to crumble to the ground, which then opens up special shatter attacks and supers, which will be critical to deal massive damage. A game that looks like pure art style is Falling Limbs, a platform fighter in which you play as a samurai, wielding a variety of weapons to dispatch your enemies in very bloody ways. This game looks like classic Japanese paintings and nails what they are going for, with it being an interesting combination of the weapon and platform fighter subgenres. Perhaps unintentionally, your character seems to be able to continue fighting even if several limbs are chopped off, and it looks like wacky fun. If you're not hardcore into fighting games, here's a title that might be of interest in the arcade fighter Tiny Fight. It is set in a medieval fantasy world in which these chibi-looking characters do battle, with there being combat, but it's not exactly traditional fighting game style with combos and such, although I'm sure it's present in another form, with there being wild and weird things like the Venom-looking character that you can see in the trailer. Apparently, Fights and Jokes is a 27-year-old game at this point, which was originally on DOS and from an Italian developer, but somehow it has found its way to a New Zealand team instead, who are adding rollback and bringing it to modern platforms. As such, it's a weird and interesting entry with true retro nostalgia faithfulness, with things like the 320x200 resolution, in which I'm not familiar with the source material, but it does look kind of fun. The arts and animations in particular look good in that cartoony style with the exaggerated features, with there being 10 characters as well, which is plenty for a smaller game.
Great!
I first came across Blazing Worldstars on Kickstarter, in which it does primarily stand out for having furries in it, but the combat and fighting game aspects do actually look pretty good. It's a 6-button title with throws and even a parry system, with an enhanced system in which you're consuming meter to supercharge your attacks. The art and animations reminds me of 90s Disney animated movies and is inspired by games such as King of Fighters and Street Fighter. Unfortunately, the Kickstarter was unsuccessful in 2022, but the developer is still posting on Twitter and development seems to be ongoing, so hopefully this will see the light of day sometime in the future. Another ambitious looking title that is still early is Umbral Core, so much so that their trailer and screenshots only show a mirror match between a single character, so I'll be waiting for more news on this. Weapon fighters are back. There have been a number of recent indie games that did okay, such as Splash, with First Cut Samurai Duel being another Bushido Blade inspired title with one-hit kills. However, if you know anything about me, I love pixel art, so the look of this game is great, having a nice variety of enemies and locations as well. There is of course a single player portion in which you take on multiple enemies at once, but the PvP duo mode seems interesting as well. I'm not sure if there are special characters or weapons per se, with different moves and attacks, since the developer only mentions cosmetic customizations such as hats and robe colors, but it's not all serious, with unlockable laser swords and such in the game as well. We did also get a new trailer since we last took a look at Coreupt, a traditional 2D fighter in a sci-fi world, being a self-proclaimed next-gen fighting game with visuals and flashy animations to match. However, my stance remains the same since I think that Coreupt is kind of a dumb name since I believe it's a misspelling of corrupt, almost as bad as removing vowels from words where the developer talks about activating the character's corrupted mode or corrupting the fighting game formula, which is kind of cringe, but you gotta do what you gotta do, I suppose. I'm excited to share this next game since I've been following the developer of Arcus Chroma Origins for quite a long time on Twitter, and it looks like his game is getting closer and closer to being done. It looks like a fantastic 2D fighter with juggle combos with an emphasis on dodging and countering. It is an interesting pixel art style, which honestly looks better in the character select screen as compared to in-game, primarily due to the lack of outlines in my opinion, but with 10 characters looks pretty ambitious, and if I'm not wrong, is from a solo developer as well.
Times I seen close shaves, one hit is all it takes. If I swing my sword and I figure it out, but I hope you don't die by the blade.
Remember when I said that weapon fighters are back? The next 3D title with a samurai punk twist is Die by the Blade, one that sure looks to evoke Bushido Blade for another era. While some of the environments appear to be in a cyberpunk city, the weapons and characters largely appear to be from classic Japanese history, so I'm not sure why that's the case. The trailer does include an interesting song that has Die by the Blade woven into the lyrics and sure is a vibe that they are going for. When I mentioned that indie fighting games really are made by fighting game fans, one of the key examples that I was thinking of is 5 Force Fighters. The developers have put a focus on their combo system and the ability to chain attacks together with the entire array of possible moves from counters and dodges to dashing, running, and even special force moves that can be cancelled into other moves and seems pretty technical, which I suppose might be what fighting game fans are looking for. Understandably, it does have a smaller roster of I believe just 5 characters, but it does look good. It was successfully kickstarted and was initially slated for a 2022 release, but like I said, these games seem to take forever, so let's hope it releases soon. I'm not going to attempt to pronounce this for fear of butchering it, but Suits of Fate is an awesome looking 2D pixel art fighting game inspired by games from the 1990s like King of Fighters, Street Fighter and Guilty Gear. It is a 4-button fighter from a Brazilian developer with the interesting concept of the Suits of Fate, in which characters gain powers according to their fantasies, with, get this, Angel, Succubus, Scarecrow and Platypus being among the characters, so colour me intrigued. There's a Ghana bar system, which I assume is the bar at the bottom of the screen, used for special attacks, but also cancelling defense or extending combos. Furthermore, there's also a catch-up mechanic in which the lower your health, the lower the cost of supers and cancels, which might lead to an interesting tug of war. However, as great as it looks, I believe there's some drama behind the scenes, nothing nefarious but more on the developer's attitude, so Brazilian viewers, if you know what's going on, please let me know in the comments below, since I don't know if this game will actually see the light of day. While Arc System Works is involved in this, Japanese developer French Bread, yes, it's confusing, is a relatively small developer who has made a fighting game that was popular enough to be at EVO, so of course, Under Night In Birth 2, Sis Celeste is of note. Again, I cannot tell you the technical differences between this and its previous entry, or any other fighting game for that matter, since it's not my area of expertise, but people love this anime fighter, so perhaps check it out. While Rivals of Aether might have started off as a small indie game and kind of looks like one due to the pixel art, over the years it has evolved into a massive game with a fan base to match, and along with a bunch of other Aether spin-offs, the developer is also making Rivals 2. This is the sequel to a tremendously popular platform fighter, which did unfortunately ditch the pixel art, going for that 2.5D look instead, and does have many returning characters, although I do expect a couple of new ones as well. If you're watching this at the end of 2023, its Kickstarter campaign is live right now with $702,000 off a $200k target, so let's see where the final figure lands at when the campaign is complete. Here's your annual update on this pixel art fighting game, where another year has passed and the Steam page for Blazing Strike is still not up, so that means no wishlist accumulation, so if the dev or publisher is watching this, what are you waiting for? It looks like one of those 90s throwbacks mentioned earlier like King of Fighters, with a nice variety of characters with at least 14 to play as, and the developer is still working on this, seeming to be on an annual schedule of releasing one video to show how the game looks, so it is not cancelled but there's still no date with more upcoming pixel art indie games in this video.